What's up, everybody? Welcome to the AllSooners Podcast, episode 194. Thursday, July 6th. We're back and forth. Tuesday one week, Thursday the next week. Dude, I don't know what we're going to do next week because it's Big 12 Media Days and it's on Wednesday, Thursday. So maybe we'll podcast on Tuesday or Friday. I don't know. Maybe we can squeeze one in. Ryan Chapman and more. I'm John Hoover in Tulsa. Later on the show, Randall Sweet's going to join us, talk about OU recruiting. Ryan, what's up today?
Not much. It was dumping and more this morning, like monsoon level rain. So I'm glad that moved through. But, John, I think we just need to go back to old reliable. The number of times that you, me, and Josh just plopped down at one of the tables in the end zone at Cowboys Stadium with just the recorder saying audio-only podcast for Big 12 Media Day. Maybe we could bring it back.
It's a possibility. We'll have to figure that out as we go. I'll tell you this. Big 12 Media Days, excuse me, next Wednesday and next Thursday. We talked about it last week on the show. They split them up. They're not going to do all 14 teams on both days. They're going to split them up 7 on one, 7 on the other. OU goes on Thursday, so we'll have a ton of content. Nobody wants to stick around podcasting late Thursday night when we all got to drive back to Oklahoma City and Tulsa. But we're going to be on site. We'll bring you something. We'll figure out what it is. We might have like an emergency pod, maybe I don't know. I'd like to podcast with some Brent Venables content to it and some Ethan Downs content and no, he's not going to be there this year, is he?
It's, Stutzman, Laulu, Gabriel, Stoops.
Yeah, so let's get into that right there because that's where I wanted to start. The four guys, Stutzman, Laulu, Gabriel, and Stoops, did not make all Big 12. In fact, no one from Oklahoma made all Big 12 preseason except Ethan Downs, who I just mentioned. He's the only guy on the preseason. I guess it's better to have the only guy be a defensive end than it is to be a punter. Like last year, Michael Turk was the only all Big 12 guy. Before we get into snubs, let's talk about that. One guy, Ryan, I looked all the way down the list and I thought, I don't have a problem with any of this except for Stutzman, who led the conference in tackles last year. I think Stutzman should have been on that first team, all Big 12. What are your thoughts? I mean, is this another commentary on the lack of talent? Is this another foreboding harbinger of a 6-6 season?
I don't know if it's commentary on the lack of talent as much as this was a 6-7 really bad football team last year. And what were the bright spots on offense? Because the defense sucked. I don't think Ethan Downs should have been a selection. I was like, wow, there must have been a lot of defensive ends graduate out. Ethan Downs was just fine on an awful defense last year. That does not warrant all Big 12 selection for me. So when you look at it, who are the best players? Marvin Mims, where is he? NFL draft. Braden Willis, where is he? NFL draft. Eric Gray, where is he? NFL draft. Anybody else you want to talk about? I think the best parts of this offensive line are going to be two tackles that haven't played a ton at Oklahoma. Javonte Barnes and Gavin Sawchuk. With Sawchuk, you're not going to vault him up there after one game. So Barnes might have been really the only other case because what wasn't going to put Dylan Gabriel forward as the one quarterback. The only person, John, if you had told me, hey, Ryan, all Big 12 team coming out today, one person's going to be on it. Who would it be? I would have said Danny Stutzman.
Easy.
So, yeah, that for me was the only candidate that I even would have considered. And so I was kind of surprised to see that it was Ethan Downs.
Yeah, and Downs, listen, everybody likes Ethan Downs. He's a great kid. Amazing. He just got married this weekend. Congratulations. Holy cow. The Sooners who are being married, getting married during the season, getting married during the off season, it's starting to stack up. Or former Sooners, Michael Turk and Grace Lyons, I think last weekend. So yeah, cool. Congratulations. I think he's a heck of a player. I think he's got a tremendous upside. But if you're basing first team all Big 12 on what you did last year, I think he had a team high 9.5 tackles for loss, something like that, 7 sacks, something like that. If you're basing it on last year, his numbers last year were very ordinary, and most of them came either in the preseason, the non-conference season, or all in one game. And there were games, 3, 4, 5 games in a row where he wasn't productive. I'm not knocking him. I'm just saying that's who you're on this team, on this Oklahoma team. That's the guy that you're saying is worthy of first team all Big 12. It's very from an Oklahoma perspective, I know there's bigger fish to fry and there's more guys who got snubbed across the conference and all that. But from an OU perspective, it's a curious one that Stutzman, 125 tackles last year, I think third in the nation, first in the Big 12. He's back, and he just got better and better and better last year. You could see him over the course of the season, 3 months, from the first month to the third month, he got better and better. By the time the bowl game got here, he was incredible. He's the face of that defense, and for him not to be first team All Big 12, I don't know if it says something or if it's just an oversight by the media who cover the Big 12 or what. But I think there's a lot of people who are saying 6 and 7 last year. I'm not voting for anybody on that team.
Yeah, and for me, it's like not even Ethan Downs' thing. That defensive line was awful last year, and it should not have a representative on all Big 12. Like, it doesn't matter. There was not like any one person was greater than the sum of its parts. Like, everybody in the Big 12 play ran on Oklahoma and ran at will. So it's not this guy or that guy. I'd say the same thing if it was Isaiah Coe, Jordan Kell, like if it was Jalen Redmond coming back and he's a first team All Big 12, like why would any member of that Oklahoma defensive line, which couldn't stop a nosebleed, whether 4-man front or 3-man front, like I just don't understand how you can carry any one of those over, because otherwise it's just you're hoping on development, and just I think it's probably more of an overall commentary on the loss of defensive line talent league wide, is why maybe Oklahoma breaking in a bunch of new pieces on the offensive line might not see a huge dip in their own run game, just because defensive lines across the country or conference, probably not as talented.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what else this might be as a commentary on the rest of the Big 12's overall talent. They've got some really good linebackers. Obviously, if you're going to keep Billy Bowman off this list, you're going to have some really good safeties, and the Big 12 does. Offensive linemen, Rain probably gets a look just because he's done it for 2 years. He's been a 2-year starter, and he's a guy that's been there for a long time. Performance-wise, I'm not one to sit here and grade offensive linemen, but I can tell you with my former radio co-host thinks Andrew Rain, who played offensive line and was an All-American college, we're talking about Sam Mays, thinks Andrew Rain is a beast. So Andrew Rain is a guy that probably got some looks, probably got some votes. They're rebuilding at tight end. They're rebuilding at wide receiver. They've got young guys at running back. Nobody wants to vote for Dylan Gabriel, right? So, I looked at the list and I'm like, I get it. I get every one of those except Stutzman over Downs. Speaking of Big 12 media days, we'll talk with Brett Yormark. The commissioner always starts the thing on the first day, usually in the morning, but he'll open up with a state of the conference kind of an address, and he's got some patting on the back to do for himself because the Big 12's got linear TV networks signed, Fox and ESPN, for 6 years, Ryan. That's not a huge long, like 12 years like the last one or anything like that, but 6 years in this technological time frame, right, where streaming is coming on more and more. More streaming services are coming on. More streaming services are getting into sports. More people are cutting the cord. To have Fox and ESPN as your TV partners for 6 years, $2.28 billion. That starts in 25, but they're signed. All the deals are signed. They jumped in front of the Pac-12 in the negotiating table to be able to do this. Their contract expires in 25. The Pac-12's 24. So the Big 12 got it done in 23. I mean, holy cow, Brett Yormark, you are killing it.
Yeah, and that's what, with the current TV deals in the landscape, I don't think you want a super long-term one unless you're the SEC or the Big Ten. Frankly, it looks like the Big Ten may have some hurdles with Kevin Warren going to Chicago and saying, yeah, this actually wasn't 100% done. So really it's just the SEC that's sitting pretty. The ACC hates their deal, and look, regardless of if you think that this was a huge money upgrade for the Big 12, or it was just like a inflation interest adjustment, you know what I mean? Just keeping up with what the cost is. Look at what just happened with San Diego State and the Pac-12. Like the Pac-12, their big key thing they want to go grab San Diego State is going to have to either stay in the Mountain West for another couple of years or pay a huge penalty to the Mountain West, because the Pac-12 can't get their house in order, right? They're still John, how many months in a row have we had they're almost there on the Pac-12 TV deal and it's still not here? The Big 12's like kicking back, relaxing, and now they can do all the economic studies on if we add Gonzaga for basketball only, is that going to actually add money? They're in brainstorm idea mode while the Pac-12 is still just trying to put bacon on the table.
Yeah, I find it interesting. The Big 12 moving forward with 12 teams. Okay, so after OU and Texas leave, they're going to go from 14 this year, which, by the way, July 1st, last week, started the new era of the Big 12. Everybody's posting their little videos and posting their welcomes and all this other stuff, right? So July 1st, we have a new Big 12. BYU, Cincinnati, UCF, and Houston have officially joined as members of the conference. We know that they're on the schedule this year, no big deal, other than the fact that the calendar turned to July and it's upon us. But they're going to make, with those with the 8 remaining members and the 4 who are new, and remember, 2 of the 8 remaining members were new 10 years ago, so you've got half your league that's only been in the conference for 10 years or more. They still are going to get an additional media from this ESPN Fox deal. Media rights wise, they're going to get an additional, it's been estimated by, I think, Pete Thamel from ESPN estimated $22 to $32 million a year. It's going to put them around the $50 million a year mark, which is where the SEC and the Big Ten are right now. So great moves, great shakes by Brett Yormark and the Big 12 to take care of business, get some things done, be proactive instead of reactive all the time. I don't know if having media days in Mexico City is in our future, or at Rucker Park in New York. I don't know if that's something that we're going to do one of these days. I don't know. I would guess not, since we cover Oklahoma, and Oklahoma is going to be in the SEC, and SEC media days are moving all around the South. So looking forward to that.
The most important thing we haven't hit, though, John, the big logo refresh, black and white logo for the Big 12. It's the exact same logo, just black and white. What are our thoughts?
Yeah, so you saw the story that I did, the column that I did on the history of the Big 12 and how years and years, decades of infighting and instability and backroom dealing and all this stuff has just destabilized the conference. The entire time it's been around, especially since 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, realignment, 2012, people leaving. Okay. The photo that I chose to use to illustrate this photo, or to illustrate with this story, was a photo from about 2009 when everybody was in peace and harmony except for Nebraska and Texas. And the logo I chose is very colorful. It's by our man KJ, shot by our man KJ at a Big 12 Media Days. Had the old logo. And I've gotten feedback, Hoover, you idiot, that's not the Big 12 logo anymore. I'm like, that's the point. When this Big 12 logo was being used, everybody was happy. We switched to this rounded off thing, and everybody's angry and wants expansion and doesn't want expansion. So, yeah, it's all about the logo, man. Got to keep it smooth.
Exactly. Now it'll be interesting. You don't have the Texas Southwest Conference kind of element where the Southwest Conference was always the conference that was just trying to put on a brave face, but did all their infighting pretty much in the open. The Big 12 did that for a little bit. Really, we say that about the Big 12, but is the SEC the only one that has figured out let's all get in a conference room, let's duke it out, and then nothing leaves this conference room? Because they did that for a long time until A&M heard that Texas was coming.
That's right. I don't know if they're the only ones, but they do a great job of keeping all that, the little smoldering fires tamped down. Let's get into the season real quick, Ryan. Action Network has favored OU to win every game this year, except Texas. It's the easiest schedule Oklahoma has had in a long time. I can't remember one quite this easy. The premium non-conference opponent doesn't really show up on this schedule. So usually when they play one of those guys, that opponent, whether it's Miami or Tennessee or Washington or whoever, Alabama, those 2 years, those schools and their premium brand come to Norman, Oklahoma, and they're not very good for one reason or another. They're just not very good. Oklahoma doesn't even have that luxury anymore. Like, well, we tried to schedule a good team. That's not on the table for this year. They didn't try to schedule a good team. They had to fill some gaps. They lost Georgia, which is too bad. We could everybody wants OU to play Georgia as quickly as possible. But so they did try. But Ryan, I don't know if OU. I don't think OU is going to go 11-1. I'm not sitting here making a prediction one way or the other, but I think it's a realistic possibility with this schedule. OU could absolutely go 11-1.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I think. We've talked about this a lot, but I know I've said this whether between 3 to 6 on the franchise, whatever. But I'm like, part of the expectations of this season are, if you could wave a magic wand and last year's Oklahoma team pops up in 2023 and plays this schedule, you replace 3 losses with 3 group of 5 teams and 3 group of 5 teams that are not world. Like, I know Cincinnati's 2 years removed from a college football playoff. That's a whole coaching staff ago. Houston was banged up to eternity. They might be the most talented roster of the 4 if they're healthy, just in the first 22, and Oklahoma doesn't play them, right? You've got a BYU team that was kind of meh last year, a UCF team that's not firing at the heights that, Scott Frost had it at, and an experienced guy in Gus Malzahn. Like, that's what you're looking at. No Baylor, no Kansas State, no Texas Tech. We're recording this before the preseason poll comes out, which we presume will be on Thursday. And those, I think that would be 3 of the top 6 of this conference, not on Oklahoma's schedule. So this is a huge test for Brent Venables and Jeff Lebby and this entire staff, because they were aggressive in the transfer portal. They've said, oh, yeah, we have to hit on these guys. They've put that pressure on themselves. Yep. Brent Venables likened it to, he was asked, is this kind of similar to when you hit on JUCO guys and you have 2 years you have to hit? And he's like, yeah, that's pretty much what it feels like. So they've got all of that going. You've got the SEC next year. If they are losing games, it is because they're getting outcoached again this year. And if that is 2 years of a sub 500 record, and then you 8 wins, even if you're all out 8 wins, one of those is Texas. But if you lose to Cincinnati, Oklahoma State, TCU, like, those are not talent riddled rosters. And that's how there's a big problem. So yeah, it's like this team could get no better and win 9 games. So that's why I think the expectations are big, not for Big 12 championship, college football playoff, all that stuff, but you have to capitalize on this soft schedule or you ain't it.
Yeah. No, I agree. If you win 9 games, you go from 6 last year to 9 this year and say, hey, that's progress. I would disagree with that. 9 games against this schedule is not progress. 9 wins, going 9-3, and losing to BYU, losing to Cincinnati, losing to, whoever else might be on the schedule. That's not good. If you don't win 10, I think the season is pretty much almost a failure. It can be written off as a setback. If you don't win 11, if you stop at 10, you get to 11, you can't get over the hump, whatever it is. You finish at 10-2 and go to a nice bowl game somewhere. I think that reflects a little bit of progress, but not enough. Against this schedule, against the 2023 schedule, I think 11 wins needs to be the standard. And we all know when you play Texas in the Cotton Bowl, anything can happen. I don't care how good Texas is, how many preseason All-Americans they have, all that stuff. They've got a better offensive line. They've got a better defensive line. They've got a better wide receiver core. They've got a better quarterback. They've got a better across the board. I think quarterback. I'm not 100% sure on that. I might have to toss a coin. But Texas is the better team. Texas has the better talent. Texas has a more established right now coaching staff. Texas is supposed to win that game. Too many times it's a coin flip and the underdog wins. So 12-0? Is that a pipe dream for OU fans?
Yeah, because Dylan Gabriel's Dylan Gabriel, so there's going to be a meltdown game.
Yeah, there's going to be somewhere where the
I don't think the defense is going to be good enough to overcome. Like, the offense is not where they lost games last year, but the defense, I know it can't get much worse, but I still think that breaking in a bunch of new pieces again, the talent level should be higher, but I think there's still going to be enough mental mistakes, at least early on, that this is not if this team goes undefeated, then Brent Venables gets to take all the victory lap. You know what I mean? Because it's just question mark after question mark after question mark. Shoot, John, this team shouldn't even be talking about winning against Texas. This team should be talking about that game is crazy and is a coin flip every year. And the 2022 OU Texas game was one of the most embarrassing one-sided routes in the history of the series.
Yeah.
That was year one of that coaching staff.
No, that's right. It was your 11th grade big brother playing in the driveway with his 6th grade little brother, right? Like that's what OU Texas looked like last year. Texas took whatever it wanted, did whatever it wanted, and just embarrassed them and ran up the score as much as they felt like doing until the fourth quarter. Yeah, it was a mismatch. I think. What do you think that game would have been? We've never really talked about this. Let's speculate. What do you think that game would have been with Dillon Gabriel on the field?
So the defense was not like the only time that the defense stopped Texas is when Quinn Ewers decided he was just going to miss wide open wide receivers. Yeah. So I think Texas still names its score probably like at 56-24 type thing with Dillon Gabriel, just because they don't shut it down as early.
Yeah, that's going two different ways, I guess. You could say they shut it down early because they had it in the bag. If OU's out there scoring 21, maybe they try to run it up a little bit more. But if Dillon Gabriel's out there, the offense isn't sputtering quite as much. Maybe they have fewer opportunities to get 56 points or 40. I think it would have been a 38-31 maybe type score for Texas and 21-24 for Oklahoma. I think it would have been closer, but not 49-0.
Well, I'd ask you this. Do you think that the spotlight was too big for Dillon Gabriel last year as the quarterback at Oklahoma, just in general?
In general, I think it was more than he was ready for. If that's saying it's too big, then so be it. I don't think it was too big in that vernacular, but I think it was more than he was ready for.
Well, I would say, like, I agree that I think he got used to it. He grew into it a little bit by the end of the year, but it's then a whole nother level of go into that stadium, in that environment, in that atmosphere, and perform. Yeah. I was not banking on Dillon Gabriel having a good first OU Texas experience the way that he handled everything else, which was just kind of shaky.
And this year it'll be the returning quarterback who has experience in the game, Quinn Ewers, versus the quarterback who has never played in the game. He suited up and stood on the sidelines.
What are you talking about? It's going to be Arch versus Jackson. We know this. Oh. It has been written.
Went there. Hey, if we can get to October and that happens, cool. I'll be fired up to cover this team the rest of the year because it will be interesting. There will have been some stuff go on that people don't like and are angry about, really angry about. And if they would get to that point in the season and there's a quarterback change, yeah, that'll be one of those seasons that we look back on saying, God, I hated to cover that, but man, it was something new every day.
Yeah, just like 2021. Just like 2021. We're just looking around like, is there anything else? Are there any other chapters to be written in this season? Oh, yes.
Yeah. This sucks covering this, but this is amazing. That's the way we left 2021 and 2005 and other tough seasons that quarterback play wasn't very good. I'll tell you what, Ryan's going to come back and we're going to talk Oklahoma softball next. There have been some changes, and yes, more could be on the way. But first, a huge shakeup on Brent Venables' support staff, plus Randall and recruiting in segment 3. That's all next on the AllSooners podcast. On Twitter, you can give us a follow at @all_Sooners. Don't believe the hype. Twitter's going to be around for a while. I'm at John E. Hoover. Ryan is at _Ryan Chapman. I think you can probably find Ryan over at Threads as well.
If you want all of your Chelsea Football Club content, that's what I've decided. My feed is going to be curated to just yelling at soccer over at Threads unless it becomes an actual thing.
Nicely done. You can follow our man Ross at Ross Lovelace. And Randall is at Randall Sweet 5. Follow him for all the latest in the recruiting news. We'll get with Randall in a few minutes to talk about the latest commitments, the latest offers, the latest announcement dates coming up. And there's quite a few. It's July now, so here we are. The website, of course, allsooners.com, Fan Nation affiliate, part of the Sports Illustrated Network. And remember, it's all free. All Sooners is. No signups, no emails, no passwords, no credit cards. All Sooners is all free. Segment 2 for you, Ryan. I didn't know what to make of this news at first when it broke during the week. Sooner Scoop had it first that Thad Turnipseed, he's the mover and shaker. He's been called the right-hand man of Brent Venables. He's the guy. He's one of those doer and finder of things. He gets things done. And he's got a big, long, fancy title at OU, or he did. He resigned. he resigned this week. So again, I didn't know what to make of it at first. You start asking people, calling around, seeing what opinions you can find and what insights you can find. Turns out that there was a little bit of, it wasn't all copacetic, apparently, as we thought. Like, I'm just going to do this and spend more time with my family. I've been building outrageously beautiful and successful facilities at two of the finest programs in America for the last 20 years. I want to throttle back. It wasn't that at all. It wasn't. I'm sorry. I got ahead of myself. I'm told that that's not what it was. There was a little bit of that involved where Thad was burning the midnight oil, working a lot of hours, spending time away from his family, and was not getting the results that he wanted. And I'll read you a couple of quotes from Brent Venables, and there was one last year from Cale Gundy as well I want to get to. But Ryan, your thoughts on what this does, why it happened, why happened now, a year and a half into his 2-year contract, and what's kind of the fallout from Oklahoma? What effects is this going to have?
Yeah, the first thought I had was, that is supposed to be the outside set of eyes, right? That we talked about this a lot. You made a great point, I think, when Brent Venables was hired, that since 1999, Oklahoma football had been viewed through the lens of Bob Stoops, which there's nothing wrong with that. Then it was Lincoln Riley, who his only experience was at Texas Tech, East Carolina, and then under Bob Stoops. So the program just hadn't had a set of eyes that had found success at another major program to see, hey, maybe you can reorganize this. Maybe this is antiquated. You need this. You don't have whatever it is. Brent Venables got to look at that for a decade at Clemson. Thad got the Clemson experience plus Nick Saban at Alabama, right? So two of the most dominant. If he could have spent a couple of years at Georgia in there, he would have had the hat trick of the last 15 years of college football. And so helping Venables behind the scenes set that up, that was my first thought, is it could be a big loss. But then the flip side of that, the second thing I had was, you mentioned the 2-year contract. Okay, he was there in the initial setup phase, that foundational phase.
Yep.
The plans for the new facility have rolled through. Board of Regents looked at it. Like, the only thing new on that are the renderings that came out that Oklahoma worked very hard to ensure those are not the renderings that they have, all that stuff. So I guess my question would be, at the end of this 2 years, outside of the fundraising, was Thad's work going to be done, essentially, because the football offices have been reorganized and the facilities are en route?
Right. That's the question I ask as well, has he done his job already? In a year and a half, he had a 2-year contract. Is he finished? Because he got the Board of Regents to pass they approved $175 million in spending to get Oklahoma into the SEC, basically, right? That's what you're doing. Your move is to get Oklahoma into the SEC. And by doing that, you have to match what the SEC has in facilities and infrastructure and things like that. He did that. He got it done. And unless they renege and say, this isn't happening, we changed our minds, we're not going to spend this on this, we're going to spend it on something else. I don't think that would happen, of course, but that's the only thing that could derail this. He did what he was tasked to do, and I don't know what else there was for him to do. But just in terms of, I don't think him and Venables were fighting, but I think they may have had a difference in opinion of where they go next, or what the facility, there's renderings coming out possibly later this summer, possibly in the fall. What do these renderings look like? I think we should have this. Maybe the other guy says, I think we should have that.
Yeah, well, that, or if you're an aggressive fundraiser, then you're going to ruffle some feathers just as it is, because you're always going to be pursuing the more, which is not necessarily a negative. You're doing your job, right? And so I wonder, too, if you have a fundraising infrastructure in place, then you have an outside person that comes in and says, I want to do it my way. I've had success at Alabama. I've had success at Clemson. That I wonder if that's not even necessarily a Venables thing, but just like the rest of the office, the rest of the backroom staff, as it would be in soccer, just because you're having to mesh all these people from different backgrounds together. When, again, for a long time, it was, here's the Oklahoma infrastructure, and they'll slowly kind of add. Then in this 2-year period, you've got all these analysts, the Soul Mission, tons of fundraise. You know what I mean? Like, you just had a lot happening all at once.
Yeah. So Venables, had some things to say about him last year, and some really, impressive sentiments by Brent Venables. He said that, and I'm just paraphrasing from a giant quote here. He says that Thad Turnipseed, quote, touched every part of it. He's a manager of people. He knows where the weaknesses are and maybe sees the shortcomings. He sees what you need to do, whether it's in personnel, he said, or you need to kick a wall out, or it's getting new equipment. Where we're going, he said he anticipates really well. So he's kind of a visionary, looks ahead. He says, here's the thing that I think may ultimately have, and I'm speculating, here's all I can do. I think this may have cost him. This is a quote from Brent. He's going to tell you the truth, whether you want to hear it or not. He's had tremendous influence. You put those things together, and it's like he understands that if Oklahoma needs to look like an SEC team, then this is the path that you get there. All right. If Oklahoma doesn't want to spend $175 million and look like an SEC team, then he could just sit there and take a paycheck. Right. But these are the ways he wanted it done. A quote last year, I think it was last spring, from Cale Gundy was interesting too. He said about Thad Turnipseed, Thad has become one of my best friends. And think about that, in a short amount of time. He wants to get things done. It's about the program and what we can do to make our program better, what we can give our players the best opportunity to be the very best and playing on equal playing fields. Now, project that to the SEC, where they're going from the Big 12 to the SEC. Oklahoma has amazing facilities. He wanted them to have, especially for the Big 12, he wanted them to have the best facilities in the country. That's as simple as I can put it. That wasn't always the case. And everybody wants that, but what are you willing to commit to get it done? How many resources, how many people, how much time during the day are you willing to, so anyway, there's a little bit of friction there, I guess, and he's on his way out. Again, 2 years, $350,000 a year. And Ryan, this is a guy that at Alabama for 11 years, he was the director of athletics facilities. He basically put together the capital projects that raised more than $150 million at Alabama and got their facilities up to snuff. At Clemson, for 9 years, Dabo hired him, director of football recruiting and external affairs. He oversaw construction of their $55 million football complex. Put Clemson on the level of those SEC schools. Now at OU, he didn't do 11 years. He didn't do 9 years. He did 18 months, sort of. And he was the point man on the new project that's going to cost $175 million. So I think this is a big loss, Ryan. I'm sure they'll hire somebody who's qualified and has a vision for what the future needs to look like at OU, but this is a big loss.
Yeah, and I also wonder for him, how difficult is it to fundraise off a 6-7 football team?
That's a good point.
I mean, it's Brent Venables said it's harsh, right? He could be hard, but how difficult is it? We know Joe Harris. We were there when he talked about, hey, they're giving money like never before after Lincoln Riley left.
Yep.
Okay, a year on, there wasn't 70,000 people at the spring game. There is a middle finger to Lincoln Riley. It was a 6-7 football team that was embarrassed. They were the laughingstock of the Big 12. Everyone pointed and laughed at OU Twitter, OU fans, the university for saying Lincoln Riley left. He was one Caleb hamstring explosion away from the college football playoff, and Oklahoma can't field a winning team. I wonder how difficult that is. The timing of just getting $175 million is not going to happen in one calendar year, no matter how excited you are for Brent Venables. Then the team gave no one any hope to fundraise off of through this summer. Because now I think there would probably, I don't know anything about fundraising. Don't know the first thing about fundraising. But if I had a ton of money, you know what I'd say? Let's see if we can win 9 games with this schedule before I fork over a couple $100,000 on this vision you're trying to sell me.
Yeah. That's a good point. They did report, I should say, OU reported last year a record fundraising year, most they've ever raised in 1 year, which is pretty shocking to think about. You one coach leaves and everybody jumps in the boat with Brent Venables, and they go 6-6, finish with a bowl loss to go 6-7. It's like, can you put a hold? Can I put a 30-day hold on that check that I sent you? And then Patty Gasso came along and fixed everybody's soul, basically, with the third national championship in a row. Ryan, there were some graduations, there were some losses, there were some exits via the transfer portal. The team talent has been on an exodus mode right now. Well, now they're on an entrance mode, and they finally, Patty Gasso, thank you for waiting till July when things are really slow to get your work done in the transfer portal. They got a pitcher, Ryan.
Yeah, Wisconsin transfer, Peyton Monticelli, and she's someone that is not a grad transfer, right? So Hope Troutwine 2 seasons ago, Alex Stracco this past year. Those were pitchers coming in last dance, one more year. She was just a freshman at Wisconsin, made the move. So she should have, if my math is all correct, 3 years of eligibility remaining. So I'm really fascinated because, last year talking with, this was Jen Rocha's comments, the associate head coach and pitching coach, filtered through Patty Gasso, where Patty Gasso had said that 4 pitchers was a good number to work with. So I don't know if that means there's one more on the way, but right now you'll have Nicole May and Kirsten Deal, who we've talked a ton about, and now Monticelli, who posted a 2.7 ERA, 2.71, I think, technically last year at Wisconsin. That puts her in the ballpark of what Nicole May had as a freshman. That number's come down, down, down every year working with Jen Rocha. The thing that I think you'll really like if you're watching is her strikeout rate. She wasn't given a ton of innings. She had second most innings, but basically every 3.7 batters, she was bringing up a strikeout, low walk numbers. I think the biggest thing for her is she did give up 8 home runs in a little bit smaller innings. So that'll be something that Roach will be working with her on, but adds another arm to the fold. She's a righty, so you have Nicole May and Monticelli working from the right side, and then Kirsten Deal on the left side. And the important thing, I think, too, is that Jordy Ball would have had 2 years left, 1 year of a grad transfer. You're filling a 3-year void with Monticelli coming in, and she's someone, too, that will get some international experience working with Team Great Britain this summer as well.
Yeah, they were in Oklahoma City, Great Britain was, and are they over there now hosting the sport?
They had, I don't know if it was a tryout or a team camp or whatever it was called, but Oklahoma State hosted them just after the Women's College World Series, and it sounds like they hung around. Team GB is going to play the Oklahoma City Spark in an exhibition or two across the pond. So Tara Henry from D1 Softball is the coach of that squad, very close with the Spark. So they were hanging around for a Spark game or two, and Monticelli made her way down to Norman, and obviously Patty Gasso closed the deal.
Yeah. Speaking of Sparks, Hannah Sparks, first base coach to everybody sitting in the stands. I'm sure she had a larger role than that on the team, working with hitters and whatnot. But Hannah Sparks, what was her role? Grad assistant, volunteer assistant? She's moving on to a full-time coaching position at Auburn. Ryan, I got a question yesterday. How the heck do you lose a coach if you're OU? What, you don't have enough money to pay him? What's going on there at OU? Are you kidding me? To Auburn? And I had to remind the person that texted me this. No, this is basically a student assistant, grad assistant, volunteer assistant, real assistant, and you get real money. You get a contract, and you get to go to work for you got your own office and all this stuff. That's what she basically is doing, Hannah Sparks. She's taking a full-time job. Not that in terms of hours, she wasn't working full-time, but because of the NCAA rules, she wasn't being paid full-time.
Yeah, and you've seen this the last couple of years. Like just this year, Hope Troutwine and Hannah Sparks were those GAs there for Oklahoma. Hope Troutwine, you can do that for 2 years before you have to move on. 1 year in, Troutwine is a pitching coach at Houston now. Sparks headed back to Alabama to coach at Auburn, where from that region, if you remember, not the 2022 or 2023 season, but the 2022 season, Zaleski, who was the first base coach, she got picked up as a staff assistant, a proper assistant for Mike White's staff at Texas. Right. So Mike White at Texas, you've seen Sydney Romero. She was a GA a couple of years, went to Duke for this past season. Now she's headed to Oregon. Mm-hmm. That's just when people get their hands on Patty Gasso coaches, that coaching tree, they want a part of that. And at Oklahoma, JT Gasso, Jen Rocha, like they are locked down at pitching coach, hitting coach. So Sparks, it's a chance for upper mobility to actually like be on the higher up of the staff as opposed to just working through the GA ranks.
Yeah, and with Hannah Sparks and Sydney Romero, you're not only getting a qualified coach who knows what's going on in the game of softball, you're getting somebody who came up with quote unquote OU DNA, right? Former players at OU who know they have that the kind of inside knowledge of how Patty operates, and maybe you can put them in the staff room and okay, so we were thinking about moving batting practice to 3:15. What would Patty do? You can ask
Yeah.
your assistant coach. No, she kept it at 3. Oh, that's a good idea. Whatever. You can kind of tap into that. I think that's smart. And then Folly Aviu.
I was going to say, you see this in the NFL all the time. Everyone wants to hire someone that has stood next to Bill Belichick.
Right.
For a while, it was everyone
populating college football with assistant coaches.
Yeah, everyone wanted to hire
the secret.
Yeah, everyone wanted to hire someone that stood next to McVay after he won the Super Bowl, right? Like, why would you not want to hire someone who was coached and then as a player and then coached under Patty Gasso? So was on the player side of those meetings and then in the coaching room where she's like, let's do this to get this effect. Everyone wants that.
Not all bad news, not all exodus. Fale Aviu, new assistant coach, former player coming back. She's since Ryan, they're going to at some point relax the rule and let you add a full-time paid assistant coach staff member. But right now, Fale is coming back and she's going to be a grad assistant, I guess.
Yeah. I need to, and this is on me. I noted this yesterday. They got away from me. I need to do the digging on when that third assistant becomes active, just because sometimes, like when we talk about softball signs this recruiting class, but they don't play till the next season. I get the dates confused because we operate on football. But yeah, I would say Sydney Romero would be someone that Patty Gasso would like to bring back and be that person. I don't know. Romero might be too high up the food chain now, but Aviu is someone that coming in, and that's another one that Patty Gasso had talked about as a player, kind of having that mind for coaching, excited to see what that next step's going to be. And the good news for Oklahoma is a lot of times if those spots open up, you'll have former players that Patty Gasso has brought along already in the coaching tree that can come back in. And then they're going to have another element of, hey, the player has an issue. Maybe it's not big enough to go take it to Patty Gasso, but now I go to Fale Aviu and be like, you played here. You understood the pressure of this. You understood how Coach Gasso's mind works, all this stuff. I think that's always been successful for Oklahoma, just as the GAs and those former players can be sounding boards for the players as much as they're learning how to coach and getting that tutelage under Gasso's watchful eye.
30 seconds, Ryan. Patty yesterday tweeted a second boomer emoji with the little bombs, which is her signifying we got one. What does your gut feeling tell you? Are they done in the transfer portal? Are they going to pull any more? And what names can you offer? Are we still talking about the same two names that we were last week?
Yeah, I really think they need a backup catcher, but Alana Otter from Stanford, pitcher, Taryn Kern, going to be a designated player from Indiana. I think the Sooners would add either one of those. That doesn't fill the catcher void. So I've been kind of scouring. There's not a lot of obvious connect the dots for the backup catcher point, but yeah, I do not think Oklahoma is done. I think that Patty Gasso maybe just gave everybody else a little week or two. Okay, you do your transfer portal thing. Now, if you don't have it mopped up, I'm going to bring the hammer down.
Yeah. I can't imagine the communication line that she's keeping open with everybody that's in the portal. Everybody's in the portal going, come on, coach. Pick me.
Make the call.
Waiting to be picked like kickball in the 6th grade again. Those were the days. Ryan, appreciate it, man. We'll let you go and bring on Randall.
Absolutely. We'll see you and avoid that monsoon that I think we're sending your way from more.
Let's hope it dissipates before it gets up I-44, or at least has to pay a toll. Coming up next on the show, Randall Sweet. He's going to join us to talk OU recruiting. That's next on the AllSooners Podcast. Okay, final segment of the AllSooners Podcast. We're back. And, hey, if you like the AllSooners Podcast, please drop us a nice rating, please. If you really like it, go ahead and give us 5 stars. We like those, too. Also, like us and share us on social media. Comment if you want to. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like, subscribe, leave us a comment there, and we'll give you some feedback. Segment 3, Randall. Randall has joined us. Randall Sweet, welcome in.
Thank you.
Yep. So you started last week. We podcasted on, I think, Thursday last week. And then on Friday, you went to the Baker Mayfield Pro Camp right
Yeah.
there in Norman, Oklahoma. You got to interact a little bit with Baker and see what he does interacting with the kids, hundreds of kids out there. What were some of your takeaways from that thing?
That he loves to have fun. When he says he loves that camp, that he means it. Because he was running from scrimmage to scrimmage, hopping in, having fun with the kids. It was really cool. He told us that he's talked to Dylan Gabriel. He really praised him, some of the OU coaches. So it was a good time, and it was good to see him. It seemed like he had a good time as well.
Little surprised he hasn't talked to fellow Texan Jackson Arnold yet.
Yeah. He mentioned that he hasn't talked to him, but he said that he was sure that he was going to be pretty good.
Yeah, he likes Jackson Arnold. He likes the SEC too. He likes Baker sending
Yeah.
Oklahoma into the SEC with some good vibes.
Yes, he did mention that he knew. He said it was inevitable.
The question is, as Ryan and I talked about in the previous two segments, what's the win total for Oklahoma in the SEC? What's the win total this year? It's projected to be 11, 10.5, 11. I say if it's not 11, it's almost a failure. If you go 10-2 with this year's schedule, and who knows what happens in the bowl game, I think that's not great. If you go 9-3 with this year's schedule, Randall, I think that's a little bit of a setback coming off of a 6-7 season. You win more games, but the schedule is so easy. It's the easiest schedule in the Big 12 this year.
Right. I mean, you feel like you have to temper expectations some, but then you look at the talent level that OU has compared to the schedule that they're playing, and you're exactly right. They shouldn't lose more than 2 games.
Yeah. Who knows what's going to happen with Texas? Texas is going to be a big favorite, but you go on the road to Cincinnati, you go on the road to BYU in November. Things can happen. I'm not willing to write it off as this team sucks because they went 9-3 or 10-2, but it does temper the expectations a little bit when you start to transition beyond that into the SEC. We'll see what happens. All right, recruiting, Randall, you are all over it as always. Last week, Sooners got 4 verbal commitments: Wyatt Gilmore, Xavier Robinson, Dozie Ezekama, and James Nesta. Those are the guys that we talked about on last week's pod. And then last Friday, after we hit the podcast, they got a 5th last week, wide receiver Ivan Carrion, former Texas Tech commit.
Yeah, so he from Odessa, Texas, so out there about 2.5 hours from Lubbock, pretty close. So it's good. You basically go into Tech's backyard and get a 4-star receiver that was committed there. That's always a big victory. Committed to Emmett Jones whenever Emmett Jones was the receivers coach at Tech. So, we're seeing more of that carryover from Texas Tech recruiting to OU recruiting with Emmett Jones that we've seen with some of the other receivers, Dozie Ezekama to name one. But he's 6'6". I mean, that's huge. We know that from the past that Jeff Lebby, Emmett Jones, they love these big receivers. But he's not just tall and long. He can move. If you watch his highlights, he's cutting, he's making people miss. I mean, he's a hurdler in track. He plays basketball. I mean, this is a guy who's a really good athlete, 4-star recruit. It's a good addition to the class for sure. The 4th receiver, which is a lot in one class. But you mentioned before the pod that they only took 1 last year. So, maybe bulking up this year is to rebuild that room.
They took 2, but they only landed 1 because one of them,
Right.
Keon Brown, is apparently ineligible. We'll have to go JUCO first. So maybe they'll get him down the line. And 5 wide receivers in this class. I saw, I follow the ref on Twitter, and they had a very clever tweet last week where he was the Emmett Jones was the OU coach, assistant coach, recruiter of the month in June, as well as May, as well as March. He was basically killing it since he's been here. And Ryan wrote a story at AllSooners.com this morning, or actually it posted about an hour ago. You guys need to check it out at AllSooners.com. Ryan's story on how he is just crushing it. He is absolutely crushing it. So he's having some real success. Emmett Jones is on the recruiting trail.
One thing I wanted to point out is, we've said that him and Levy, they like these big body receivers. We've seen that from Levy's past offenses. I mean, other than KJ Daniels, you look at the guys who are committed in this class. You have Zion Kearney, who's 6'2", 200 pounds already. Dozie Ezekama is about 6'3", 185 already. And then now Ivan Carrion, who's 6'6", 210. So those are three pretty big body receivers right there. We're kind of seeing that trend continue. And then you've got the speedster in KJ Daniels, just like how in the 2025 class you already have that speedster in Grayson Harris.
Yeah. Now, if Randall, if they were projecting a little bit ahead, but if they were to get a commitment from Zion Reagans out of Gray, Georgia, he's a guy that's got OU on his finalist list, Florida State, and Georgia. Okay.
Yeah.
Georgia, I think, is favored at this point, but a couple of weeks ago he was. It sounded like by all interviews and reports and tweets and whatnot, social media, he was all in on Oklahoma. That may or may not have changed, but he would be the fifth wide receiver in this class. He's run a 10.37 before. So his announcement date is coming up. Let's work backwards, if you don't mind. Michael Patterson McDonald, defensive back out of Westmore, July 31st is his. And then Zion Reagans, you have his date handy when he's committing?
July 18th.
July 18th. So that's coming up in a little under 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Casey Poe, his commitment date, offensive lineman, interior offensive lineman from Lindale, Texas.
Yeah, July 12th. So we'll be at Big 12 Media Days, of course.
Yes, that's very typical that commitments start coming when we're overwhelmed in a sea of Big 12 Media Days. Tight end Devon Mitchell out of Los Al in California, July 8th. Is that right?
Yes, and also on July 8th is I don't know if it's Marcus or Marquez Easley from Kankakee, Illinois.
Okay, offensive lineman, right?
Yes, yeah, tackle.
Big Easy, I think he goes by.
Yeah, exactly.
Mitchell's a 5-star tight end. He's going to be a good one.
Yeah.
Up next, though, there's a commitment announcement coming tonight. So a lot of you guys, by the time you listen to this podcast or watch this podcast, the decision will already be made. The news will be out, and we'll have a story at AllSooners. But defensive end, defensive lineman, 270-pound kind of defensive end mostly, but he can play inside if he wanted to. Joseph Jonah Ajonye from Conroe, Texas. He's committing tonight, Randall.
Yep, and from what it looks like, even though apparently he has a good relationship with OU, from what it seems like, it does not look like OU is going to win this battle. It seems like Georgia's the favorite from everything that we've seen and heard, and it's just hard to beat a team like that on the defensive line for big time recruits. With the track record that they've had recently of winning, obviously, and putting players in the NFL, it's hard to compete with that. But exactly, and the more that this coaching staff at OU can build that defensive line, build wins, and put guys in the NFL, they'll start to win some of those battles more. But with as new as they are here, it's just hard.
It's the single most important position that Oklahoma has to upgrade if they're going to hope for any kind of success in the SEC, and they need to upgrade it now because when they get to the SEC next year, those guys are going to be freshmen. They're not going to play as freshmen. Most of them are not going to play as freshmen. Your PJ Adebores and guys like that are going to be sophomores when they get to the SEC. So he'll have a year under his belt, so to speak, when they transition to the SEC. But, 2025, 2026, you better start building now. You better start laying that foundation now. So I agree with you. I think Ajonye is going to Georgia, but he would be a fantastic piece. And there's some other pieces out there. We've talked about him, Williams Nwaneri, for instance. Your gut feeling on Devon Mitchell? He's down to Alabama, Miami, and OU, and Miami has really taken off in his eyes. That's what we understand.
Yeah, I mean, from everything that we understand right now, I would still say that OU probably is the place. But like you said, if it were Miami, I would not be shocked at all. I don't know personally, what it was that about Miami that crept up, but apparently he visited there and loved what he saw. And so if it was Miami that we see on July 8th, I think at 3 p.m. Central Time, it wouldn't be surprising. But right now, I would still say that OU is optimistic about that from what I understand.
Yeah, Miami hasn't had a ton of success lately, but they've got that South Beach lifestyle.
Yeah,
and it's hard to beat.
Yeah.
Miami also has some boosters who have their fingers deep in the bag, so to speak.
Yeah, NIL money is big.
NIL is huge for Miami. That's how they're winning a lot of these. That's at least what we're told. And, they're doing what they can to rebuild the culture there. All right, Casey Poe, what's your gut on the big offensive lineman? He's down to, I think, 7 schools: Alabama, Auburn, Clemson, Georgia, LSU, OU, and Texas Tech.
From what I understand, that seems like a Alabama victory right there. From looking at his Twitter and the most recent visits he's been on, it seems like he really likes Alabama. He visited OU in June, so there is a chance that they Bill Bedenbaugh can pull him. But you've mentioned it before. If you look at Bill's track record, he doesn't usually pull these high rated top interior top offensive linemen in the country. So, he builds great linemen out of the players he does recruit. But yeah, from what I see, it doesn't seem like Casey Poe is going to be coming to OU. I feel like though it is notable that a player that's this highly recruited would have Texas Tech in his Final Four or Final Seven. Joey McGuire is doing some work out there.
Yes, they're having some success that you wouldn't expect on the recruiting trail. But yeah, like you said, Joey McGuire. He's got some things going on. Okay, Zion Reagans, gut feeling on him?
Yeah, I think you mentioned it earlier too. I think Georgia looks like they might pull away there, or Florida State. But being from what do you say, Gray, Georgia? I think it's Jones County. Right there in the Bulldogs' backyard. Again, with all the success and the track record they've had of putting players in the NFL, it's hard to compete with that.
We kind of skipped over Michael. July 31st is his date to commit. Defensive back, obviously 4-star.
Yeah.
So if Zion Reagans out of Georgia is going to Georgia, then Michael Patterson out of Oklahoma is going to Oklahoma, right?
You would hope so. I mean,
it moves in-state guys to other schools and out-of-state guys to other schools. Can you? That's bad.
Yeah, that's very bad. That's when you've reached an alarming point. But it seems like right now that OU's in a good spot with him. And of course, we've mentioned it before. He's a very talented player himself, and you would love to get a good defensive back. A very, players around the OKC Metro rave about his character. He himself has said that he's a leader. His dad, who played at OU, told me that he's really a leader on Westmore's defense, and that's something that Brent Venables and these coaches love. But even beyond that, the connections that he has with a Caden Durham, a David Stone, that is invaluable. Who doesn't want to play with their childhood friends? And these are guys that he grew up with. So not only getting his talent on board, but the recruiting work that he could do for OU, bringing him on board would be huge. And I mean, his Final Four is, I believe, Houston, Missouri, OU, and UNLV. And I mean, if you look at those other three schools, those aren't schools that usually beat out OU for recruits, especially not kids that are right in their backyard that are OU legacies. And it doesn't seem like OU's just come in last minute to offer this guy like they might have under previous regimes. This is a guy that they've had in their sights for a while now.
Caden Durham just tweeted right before we started this segment, just tweeted a photo of himself on his visit at OU, sitting in the throne. I can't tell who he's with. It's another recruit, but he tweets with the photo an upside down kind of face emoji, I guess.
Yeah, that's been all over his Twitter recently. I've been trying to figure out what that means.
Right. You would want a running back of that stature to join your camp.
Absolutely, you would.
But he looks good in OU stuff.
Hey, like we said, if the Sooners can get Michael, if they can get David Stone, then that'd be huge in landing Durham, who's childhood friends with those two from Southmore originally.
Right. And Stone, what's your gut on him?
From what we understand and from everything I've heard, it seems like OU's in a great spot. I mean, he's on campus all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, he's from the Oklahoma City Metro, and he's back here over the summer when he could be anywhere else. I mean, of course, he's taking visits to Miami and some other schools too, and any big-time recruit's going to do that. They're going to take their visits. But, I mean, for as much as he's been on campus, even if they aren't all official visits or whatever, just getting him on campus, getting him, in front of the coaches, letting them talk to him, that's a great sign. The fact that he wants to be here so much already, I think that's a good sign, and it really indicates where he feels right now. And again, if OU can get Michael, that would be huge in pulling David Stone. And Xavier Robinson, after he committed, he mentioned that he was trying to get Stone on board too. So they're working hard.
Yeah. So Another one that has been to OU a lot, a defensive lineman, Williams Nwaneri. He's been to OU at least 6 or 7 times. He's been favored to go to OU. He's been leaning toward OU. Everybody's been predicting and all that stuff going to OU. And seems to be some momentum that he's might be leaning toward Georgia now.
Yeah, I've seen a lot on Instagram and on Twitter. A lot of OU fans worried that he's now leaning Georgia. I saw I saw a post that I think it was a fake quote that he said if he had to decide right now, he would choose Georgia. But I couldn't find where he actually said that anywhere, so I wouldn't put any stock in something like that. I think most of that worry is because he's been to Georgia a few times this summer. But again, we've said it before, just a few minutes ago, the talent that they produce, the success that they have, they're going to be able to at least lure in some of these top recruits for visits. If you're a player of his caliber, that's going to entice you. But we haven't seen anything from him or from anyone that indicates anything official that he's leaning towards Georgia or, that's where he would commit if he had to right now. So I think right now OU fans should stay calm and just let the ship ride, let Brent and let the coaching staff do their thing, and we'll see where the chips fall. And I mean, it's going to be hard to beat out Georgia, especially for those top players. But if you want to land the top players in the country, it's always going to be a battle.
Yeah, and your relationship with Todd Bates and your relationship with Miguel Chavez is huge.
Yeah,
so,
especially with him having a coach who played for OU when Venables was on staff, and another player on the team, the coach's son, Isaiah Mazie, being favored to go to OU in the 2025 class.
Okay, another nearby guy, right across the border, right across the Red River, Melissa, Texas, Nigel Smith.
Yeah.
What you got on him? Defensive lineman, 4-star, some think possible 5-star. Hell of a player.
Yeah. When I talked to him, it seemed like he really loved OU. I asked him, out of all of the top schools that he has, the places he's been visiting, A&M, Penn State, Ohio State, OU, what sticks out? What sticks out about Texas? What sticks out about all those places? And from what he told me, I would think that Ohio State and that OU and that Penn State have a really good shot. He raved about his relationship with the coaches at OU and at Penn State, and he raved about the track record of the coaches at Ohio State, which it is impressive. They've put a lot of defensive linemen in the NFL. If you look at the Bosa brothers, I mean, you can go down the list. There's tons of dudes that they put in the league. But what he told me was that he really loved the Soul Mission, which is what OU has, and he raved about the Soul Mission, which is something I've talked to with multiple recruits that they really, really love about OU. So as long as they have that to set them apart, they have, like you said, your relationship with Todd Bates, with Miguel Chavez, that's as long as that can stay strong, I think that they've got a really, really good chance with him. Of course, he's committing in a few months. Anything could change between now and then. Yeah. But right now, it seems like they're doing really well. And him being so much closer to OU than, Ohio State, Penn State, I think that will really benefit them. From what I gathered, A&M and UT are more just like, hey, those are the big programs around. They can do good things in NIL. They can put together good classes that can, compete. So of course you're going to take a look at those if you're from Texas. And I could be wrong. It could be more than that. But from when I talked to him, that's what I understood.
One thing I've learned in 30 plus years in this business, Randall, is that anytime you get a chance to write about or talk about quarterbacks, you're serving your leaders, you're serving your listeners. You wrote a really cool piece on the possibility of a quarterback offer in the 2026 class. They got a 24, Michael Hawkins. They got a 25, and Kevin Sperry. They haven't really started on the 26s yet. These are guys that are freshmen in high school and haven't played on the varsity yet. So they haven't, the evaluations right now, what the material they have is really thin. But I love the story that you did. You looked ahead to some, players in the region, some players in the area in Texas for sure. Some really impressive names in there down the line in the 2026 quarterback class, Randall.
Yeah. So They haven't offered anyone yet. It seems like Brent and the staff, they really like to do their due diligence and hold off on making those offers prematurely. They don't offer kids before they get to high school like we've seen other schools do. And with quarterbacks, they don't offer them before they've seen too much. And so that's why we haven't seen a 2026 offer go out yet. But I would imagine that as these kids are starting to be sophomores now, if they can put together some good sophomore tape, then that's when we might see some offers go out. Two kids that I thought were really intriguing are two local guys. One at Millwood, and his name is Skylar Turnbull. He goes by CJ Turnbull. So he's teammates with Jaden Nickens, and he's got a huge arm. I mean, when we watched him, he went to I think 3 sessions of the Brent Venables Elite Camp, and when we got to see him there, I mean, he was just launching it 50 yards with ease. I mean, fast release, the ball comes off his hand really quick, and that's a guy who's probably already about 6'1", 6'2". Going into his sophomore year of high school. Obviously, he's young, so he could put on some weight still, but those raw skills that you like to see, that quick release, the arm strength, the mobility, they were all there from him. So if he puts together, a good season, we know OU has eyes on Millwood already. They've recruited Marcus Major. Jaden Nickens is there right now. It's a guy that they're really heavily recruiting. So we know they're going to have eyes on, and if Turnbull continues to play well, I could see him getting an offer. And then in Stillwater, there's Connor Quintero. He's already got a few offers. Oregon, to name one, that's one of the bigger programs that's offered him. And it might be hard to get a recruit out of Stillwater, or maybe it won't be now that you're not playing in the Big 12. We don't know what OSU quarterbacking is going to look like in the next few years. So maybe it's not as hard as we think. And he's a guy that's already, gotten some recognition nationally. So that could be a guy that OU looks at. He's already on the radar of the coaching staff for sure. And then another guy that we got to see at the Brent Venables Elite Camp is Dayton Raiola. He's the younger brother of Dylan Raiola, who's the number 1 prospect in the 2024 class. He's a Georgia commit, huge 5-star quarterback. And his younger brother hasn't even played varsity yet because he's had to back up his older brother. But when we saw him at the Brent Venables Elite Camp, he was definitely special, and he's a guy that will get offers for sure down the line. He's already got one from Nebraska, but he had a cannon. I mean, easily putting the ball 50 yards through the air. I mean, almost hitting the top of the Everest training facility with the spiral he had on the ball. I mean, just really impressive the way the ball pops off his hand. Probably the strongest arm of maybe anybody except for Kevin Sperry, or maybe even, neck and neck with Kevin Sperry. He could really sling it. He played at Pinnacle, Arizona, and the Raiolas just moved to Buford, Georgia, so Dylan could be closer to, the Bulldogs, kind of similar to the Kevin Sperry situation. So might be hard to pull him away if he does become a big-time recruit that Georgia's interested in. But the fact that he was at the Brent Venables camp already, that it's interesting. It's something to note for sure, I would think.
I can't wait to watch Sperry at Carl Albert. That's going to be fun.
Oh, man. Yeah, that team is just going to destroy almost everybody. They're going to be incredible. I mean, him and Xavier Robinson in the same backfield.
Not fair.
No, not fair.
Good stuff, Randall. Anything else jump out at you before we bail?
The running back situation is still interesting.
Yeah.
We mentioned Durham. Still feels like we're still waiting to hear what's going to happen with Taylor Tatum. So that's really interesting. Something I'm keeping my eye on for sure.
Something to watch. Hey, man, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
And thank you guys for listening. We'll be back next week on the AllSooners Podcast. We'll be breaking it down for you from Big 12 Media Days down in Arlington, Texas. We'll try to figure out how to do this. It's logistically going to be really tough, but we'll give you something. Might be a short pod. Maybe it'll be a in between days. Maybe it'll be a short wrap up at the end. Who knows? Anyway, you can catch that one and all of our shows on Apple, Google, Spotify, Podbean, iHeart, wherever you get your podcasts. If you have an Amazon-enabled device, just say, Alexa, play the AllSooners Podcast. She'll hook you up. It's also posted on our website, allsooners.com. Just click on the player, listen on your phone, your tablet, or your computer. And, of course, all my shows are on my YouTube channel, John Hoover Media. For Ryan Chapman and Randall Sweet, I'm John Hoover. See you guys.